Hey guys, thanks for being here. Before you listen, could you please hit that subscribe button, as most of you listening aren't subscribed? It'll really help this new channel grow. Thank you. It was a cold, foggy night when I set out on the long drive to visit my elderly parents who live a few hours from me out in the countryside. I don't make the trip as often as I should, so I was looking forward to spending some quality time with them. The plan was to stay for the weekend to help my dad make some repairs around their old farmhouse and keep my mom company while she canned vegetables from their garden. As always, I stopped at the gas station near my apartment to fill up and grab some snacks for the road. I picked up a coffee and donut to munch on and filled my travel mug with sweet tea. Getting on the highway just as the sun was going down, I sighed contentedly, ready for the relaxing drive ahead. At first it was smooth sailing. I had my favorite music playing and was making good time as I watched the city fade into rolling fields and forests. After a couple of hours, traffic started to thin out. I hadn't passed another car for miles, and it was getting quite dark and foggy. The radio started cutting in and out, so I shut it off, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I didn't mind the solitude. There was something peaceful, yet eerie about being the only car on the open highway surrounded by woods. The yellow lines in the headlights glowed hypnotically. Out of nowhere, a set of bright headlights appeared behind me, jolting me out of my road trance. I peered in the rearview mirror to see an enormous semi-truck right on my bumper. The fog diffused its lights, giving them an ominous glow, like the eyes of a predator stalking his prey. I sped up to create some distance, but the truck roared its engine aggressively. It tailgated me, matching my speed no matter how fast I went. 85 miles per hour, 90 miles per hour, 95 miles per hour. That truck stuck inches from my back bumper, the bright high beams blinding me. My heart started pounding rapidly. Why wouldn't this truck leave me alone? I tried slowing down, speeding up, switching lanes, but nothing worked. Miles of empty highways slipped by with the truck glued behind me, its constant high beams illuminating the fog. I rifled anxiously through my bag for my cell phone, hoping to call the police. But I had no service out here in the remote countryside. I was totally alone on the desolate highway, with this menacing truck toying with me like a cat with a mouse. Sweat dripped down my forehead as I racked my brain for a way out. Maybe I could take an exit and try to lose it on some back roads. I didn't have any other options. As soon as I saw a rural route, I veered off sharply, the ominous truck following close behind. The exit led to a narrow, pitch-black road surrounded by dense forest. My hands trembled on the wheel as I crept into the dark unknown. The truck's blinding headlights cut through the inky woods as it tailed me like a stalking predator. I thought about stopping, but was too afraid of it rear-ending me at high speed in the darkness. So I drove on cautiously as the road twisted and turned, getting progressively narrower and more isolated. My chest felt tight, and I could barely breathe. How long until we reached civilization again? Would I run out of gas first? What did this truck want from me? None of it made any sense. Suddenly, the blinding headlights that had followed me for what felt like hours vanished from the rearview mirror. I tapped the brakes and looked back in confusion to see only darkness behind me. The truck was just gone, vanished without a trace on the narrow, deserted road. I rolled down the window, but heard nothing except the wind faintly whistling through the dense trees. Somehow that huge semi-truck had disappeared into the night. A cold chill went down my spine. I drove on slowly, searching intently for any driveway or side road it could have turned down. But there was nothing except pitch-black forest in all directions. After a few tense minutes that felt like an eternity, I came upon a tall, closed metal gate blocking the rural road. It was a dead end. I sat in silence, listening intently for any sign of the truck. But there was nothing except the thudding of my own heart. I felt like I was going to vomit as the terrifying reality sunk in. That truck had chased me relentlessly into the middle of nowhere and then just vanished. What did it want from me? Why didn't it just pass me on the highway? How does a giant semi disappear on a one-lane road? None of it made any rational sense. I whipped the car around recklessly fast and sped back down the road, praying I wouldn't see those ominous headlights again. I drove faster than I ever had, branches whipping my car as I swerved around sharp curves. But the road behind me remained empty, almost tauntingly so. When I finally got back to the main highway, I floored it, wanting to get as far away as possible. I white-knuckled the steering wheel for the remainder of the tense trip, hyper-alert and jittery. I still have no clue what really happened that night, but the memory still shakes me to my core. Who or what was driving that truck that toyed with me for what felt like eternity, only to disappear without explanation? I'll never know. I've been a truck driver now for going on 15 years, hauling loads all across this great country of ours. I've seen just about everything you could imagine out on the open highways. Beautiful sunrises, fierce thunderstorms, wildlife crossing the road, cars broken down on the shoulder. But nothing could have prepared me for the night I got chased down a deserted stretch of highway by a black sedan full of robbers. It started out like any other delivery. I was behind the wheel of my '97 Kenworth, hauling a load of furniture from Iowa to California. The company dispatcher had planned my route to avoid the big cities and any potential traffic hassles. This meant a lot of lonely two-lane blacktops through the kind of small towns where everyone knows your name. About 7 hours into the trip, I stopped at a rundown truck stop just outside of Green River, Utah to refuel. As I stood there pumping diesel, I casually surveyed the parking area and noticed a beat-up black sedan, parked way at the far end, hidden in the shadows. Couldn't see anyone inside, but something about it gave me an uneasy feeling in the pit of my stomach. I shrugged it off, figuring it was just a fellow driver getting some shut-eye. If I had known then what I know now, I would have jumped back in my rig and floored it out of there. But I didn't flee. I went inside the truck stop, paid for my fuel and grabbed a coffee and some jerky for the road. Got back on Highway 50 heading west just as night fully descended on the desert. After a few hours, the passing cars became fewer and farther between. Up ahead I could see the lights of a small town, but once I passed it, I was truly out in the middle of nowhere. Nothing but scrub brush and Joshua trees for miles in either direction. That's when a pair of headlights appeared behind me, trailing at a distance. At first I thought nothing of it, just another driver sharing this lonely road. But over the next half hour those headlights kept getting closer and closer. I checked my mirror again and felt my stomach drop. It was that black sedan from the truck stop earlier. My suspicions were confirmed when the car raced up dangerously close behind me and flipped on his high beams, blinding me. I could barely see the road ahead as he rode my tail, trying to get me to pull over on this dark, deserted highway. But there was no way I was stopping for some stranger out here in the middle of the night. I hit the throttle, coaxing my diesel engine to give me everything she had. The semi slowly picked up speed as I tried to get away from the mysterious sedan. But he matched my speed, sticking in my bumper no matter how fast I went. We must have flew along at 100 miles per hour, the car swerving recklessly, trying to get around me. But I did my best to block him, refusing to give him room to pass. My pulse was racing and my knuckles were white from gripping the steering wheel so tight. I got on a CB radio to call for help, but got no response. We were too far out in the sticks. It was just me and this increasingly aggressive driver. Suddenly, I noticed the highway ahead curved and dipped down steeply. An idea popped into my exhausted, adrenaline-soaked brain. This was my chance to get away. I said a quick prayer as I pushed the gas pedal flat to the floor. The old Kenworth strained as I tore into the curve well above the advised speed. The G-forces crushed me back into the seat as I clung desperately to the wheel, guiding the rig around the sharp bend. I spared a quick glance in the side mirror and saw the sedan lose control as it tried to keep up. It went barreling straight through the flimsy guardrail like it wasn't even there. The car flipped end over end down the steep embankment in an explosion of dirt and debris. I caught one last glimpse of its mangled shape enveloped by a cloud of dust before the wreck faded from my mirrors. I kept the hammer down for a few more miles to make sure none of the occupants had improbably survived the crash and were now pursuing me on foot. Only when the adrenaline finally began to fade did I take my foot off the gas and let out the breath I'd been holding in for what felt like hours. I pulled into the next town and reported the whole terrifying incident to the police. They later informed me that 2 armed men had been found dead in the wreck, but that the driver was nowhere to be found. To this day, I still wonder if he somehow crawled from that mangle of twisted metal and limped off into the desert darkness, escaping justice. What did they want with me that night? Why did they target my truck? I'll probably never know the answers. I completed my delivery to California without any further trouble, but ever since that fateful night, I see any lonely stretch of highway differently. I know now the potential dangers that lurk out there in the dark along America's backroads, where help can be hundreds of miles away. The life of a long-haul trucker is a lonesome one, let me tell ya. Endless hours alone on the endless ribbon of highway, nothing but the drone of the engine and a few scattered tunes on the radio to keep you company. But the freedom of the open road has its own appeal, and the pay's decent enough if you can hack the lifestyle. This particular night back in 2009, though, is one I won't be forgetting anytime soon. I picked up a load of new auto parts in Detroit and was making the long haul straight shot down I-70 to Denver. The highway had been a lullaby, dark and deserted under the glow of the high beams. After driving straight through from Michigan, my eyelids were getting heavy as the morning hours crept up on me. That's when the flickering neon sign of the sundown truck stop came into view up ahead like an oasis in the barren Kansas night. Just what I needed to refuel and recharge before I ended up dozing off at the wheel and wrapped around a tree. I pulled off the interstate into the nearly deserted parking lot, the only other signs of life being a couple of big rigs parked off to the side. As I killed the engine, I could feel the rumbling weight of miles and miles slowly stilling beneath me. Grabbing my backpack, I headed inside, the bell over the door tinkling to announce one more weary traveler seeking refuge. The lone employee, some zit-faced kid, didn't even look up from the comic book he was absorbed in behind the front counter. I beelined straight for the restrooms first. Yeah, I know, rookie mistake. But when nature calls, you answer. As I was washing my calloused hands in the dingy sinks, I caught a glimpse of movement in the cracked mirror to my left. A woman had wandered in behind me, her face partially obscured by a grease-stained baseball cap. She looked just as hard-worn and broke down as my rig, graying stringy hair hanging across her gaunt cheeks, sunken eyes, clothes that had clearly seen their better days long ago. Just another hard-luck drifter passing through, I figured as I turned to leave. What happened next, I never could have predicted in a million miles. As I moved toward the door, she blocked my path, a crazed look in her eyes. My heart started pounding as she reached into her tattered coat pocket. Knife? Gun? I instantly felt hyper-alert, braced for whatever crazy stuff was about to go down in this nowhere truck stop at 3 a.m. But instead of a weapon, she pulled out a crumpled, faded photograph and thrust it at me, her bony finger jabbing at the image. "You recognize this girl?" she rasped, desperation cracking in her voice. I squinted at the picture, the smiling face of a pigtailed teenager, probably a high school photo by the look of it. Never seen her before in my life, I said slowly, confusion and trepidation churning together. The woman's entire body seemed to deflate all at once. Oh God, I was so sure. She clutched the photo to her frayed coat, tears welling up in her hollow eyes as she started to visibly tremble. That's when the tragic realization hit me like a ton of bricks. This poor woman was looking for her missing daughter. I'd heard the horror stories, kids getting snatched up off the streets and sold into human trafficking rings and other sick depravities I hated to even think about. This woman's despair, her determination to leave no stone unturned in her search, it was all finally computing. "Hey, I'm sorry," I started, holding up my grimy hands in a pacifying gesture. "Maybe if you could tell me more about her," I cooled. But she was already shoving past me, violent sobs racking her frail body as she hurried out of the bathroom. A second later, the truck stop's front door slammed behind her with a hollow thud, and just like that, she was gone. Swallowed up by the night once more. I stood there for a long moment, letting out a shaky breath. Just a sad, desperate mother looking for her missing kid. No threat at all, and yet, somehow that only made the whole encounter more profoundly unsettling. Suddenly, the truck stop felt too small, too confining, the air thick and viscous. I needed out. Now. I tossed a crumpled couple of biddles on the counter for the disinterested cashier kid and hurried back out to my idling rig, hauling ass out of that lot like the devil himself was on my tail. As the truck stop shrank in my rear view, I couldn't shake the image of that woman's anguished face burned into my brain. The rest of the long haul to Denver passed by in a kind of waking daze. I cranked the radio up full blast, searching for any kind of noise to distract me from replaying that encounter over and over again in my head. It didn't really work. Her desperate plea, the crumpled photo, the breaking dam of emotions, it all kept looping, unbidden. To this day, years later, I'll never forget that chance encounter at the sundown truck stop. I've seen my fair share of strangeness out on the road, working one of the last true loner jobs, But nothing has ever quite measured up to those few terrifying minutes when an ordinary pit stop turned into near madness before that broken woman vanished back into the night from whence she came. The thing is, it could have happened to any trucker, a weary traveler catching us at our most vulnerable for just those few split seconds before retreating, like a specter, leaving us to wonder what fresh private horror we'd stumbled into, however briefly. I'm just grateful all she wanted was answers, not violence. That could have gone a whole lot worse for me if her desperation had been of the more unhinged variety. Lord knows there's enough sickos drifting out here on the unmapped byways to make any rational person's hair stand on end. Trucking might not be the most glamorous gig, but it's the lifeblood that keeps this country's wheels turning, one highway at a time. We're the ones keeping a little mystery and unpredictability alive too, at least until those AI semi-trucks put us all out to pasture. So yeah, be careful what you come across at 3 a.m. at places like the Sundown in Kansas. Could just be a helpless woman, or something worse lurking behind that smile. Not knowing is half the allure, and sometimes the terror of this nomad's life. That's just another day in the life out here on the blacktop. One of the few true frontiers left, at least for now. Just me and that endless rolling ribbon of road, and whatever secrets are waiting around the next exit ramp. This Chicago run was supposed to be an easy overnight haul from Dallas, but as I entered the deeply wooded stretch of highway near the state border, the truck's engine started sputtering like it was taking its last breaths. Billowing steam from the hood signaled she wasn't long for this world. I managed to maneuver the rig to the road shoulder just as the engine cut out completely. Popping the hood revealed a confusing maze of metal and tubes, none of which gave me the slightest clue what was wrong. I'm no mechanic, but might as well take a look, I thought. As dusk settled in, I grabbed my heavy-duty flashlight to shine some light on the situation. Still no obvious cause for the breakdown. Cranked the ignition several times hoping she'd turn over, but got nothing but clicks. Knew I had to call for a tow, but a quick check showed no cell service this far into the sticks. With no other choice, I resigned myself to waiting it out in the cab, munching on some jerky and sipping water to pass the time. I flipped on the radio for some company as darkness crept over the land. The station faded to static as night fully descended. With a sigh, I switched off the radio and tried to catch some shodi. That's when I first heard them, faint whispers drifting out of the dense forest. At first I figured it for wind rustling the leaves, but the hushed voices seemed to intensify, just on the edge of comprehension. I peered out the window searching for any sign of life, but could see nothing except pitch blackness between the skeletal trees. A chill went down my spine that had nothing to do with the cab's chill. I made sure to lock the doors and found myself watching the woods intently. The spectral whispers came in waves, sometimes so soft I thought I imagined them. Other times they grew louder and more distinct, though I couldn't make out any actual words, just an endless murmuring. Part of me wanted to grab my tire iron, storm into those woods and confront whatever was lurking within, but the cautious side said to stay put in the relative safety of the locked truck. No telling if those whispers belonged to harmless kids or a deranged psycho. Either way, I figured nothing good would come of a late-night forest meetup. As the lonely hours dragged on, it became a battle to keep my heavy eyelids from dropping. The whispers haunted me even during my brief snatches of sleep. Who was whispering? Why didn't they leave me be? I just wanted some peace and quiet before dealing with the busted rig at first light. Exhaustion must have won out eventually, because I jerked awake to a loud bang reverberating from the truck's side. Heart pounding, I checked each window trying to see what caused the ruckus, but only empty blackness filled the space between the trees. I stayed vigilant the rest of the night. All thoughts of sleep vanished. Any time I came close to nodding off, some new disturbance would snap me back awake. More bangs, claws scratching metal, and those damnable whispers. I gave up any notion of rest. I watched the sky impatiently for the first glow of dawn's light to banish the shadows. At the faintest hint of sunrise, I hurriedly pushed open the door to inspect the exterior. Aside from the broken-down rig, everything appeared normal in the early morning glow. No damage or signs of intrusion that I could see. The whispers had fallen silent, leaving me to wonder if it was all in my weary head. I paced around the truck to get the blood pumping and fully rouse myself. Checked my phone again despite knowing it was futile. Still no signal this deep in the forest's embrace. It was time to start walking until I found help or a spot with cell service. I gathered some gear for the hike ahead. As I turned to leave, I took one last look at the now harmless-seeming woods. The bizarre events of the night already felt distant, like a bad dream. I set off down the lonely highway on foot. The morning sunshine and physical exertion helped wash away the ominous dread that had festered during the long night. After a couple miles, my phone finally dinged with a text from the towing company saying they were on their way. I nearly cried from relief and kept marching until the tow truck finally arrived.